Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. I had a rather late night last night and sort of lay in. I've been coming very early, just before 6 to avoid the traffic. And what I've discovered, if you come at about 8, there isn't any traffic. Home thoughts, obviously the big Cuba announcement caught my attention, went back to Fidel Castro, who said famously, "A revolution is not a bed of roses. A revolution is a struggle between the future and the past." I'll put up a photograph of him at the United Nations in 1960. You can see him, he was in his prime. And then I like this quote because I think it's also about companies and organizations and teams. "I began revolution with 82 men. If I had to do it again, I do it with 10 or 15 and absolute faith. It does not matter how small you are, if you have faith and a plan of action." I think he's very right. Put up another photograph of him exhaling cigar smoke at a press conference. Barack Obama, the big political news is to drop Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Marco Rubio was not very happy. Notified Congress he intends to remove Cuba from a list of state sponsors of terrorism less than a week after meeting with Cuban President Raul Castro in Panama. The government of Cuba has not provided any support for international terrorism during the preceding 6-month period, Obama said in the certification sent to Congress today. The government of Cuba has provided assurances that it will support acts of that it will not, pardon me, support acts of international terrorism in the future. Congress have 45 days to respond. I think both Havana, which is obviously the aperitif in my opinion for the main prize, which is Tehran, but both Havana and Tehran are significant foreign policy prizes, in my view, bearing in mind the entrenched opposition to both within the US. Put up a photograph of Havana I found, and then a photograph that AFP tweeted of Barack Obama, and there's a rainbow in the background. This was Kingston, Jamaica. It's been doing the rounds. Daoud_King, kids in Yemen are hiding in holes due to Saudi airstrikes. They don't have any safe place to live. I'll put up that photograph. And part of the issue there is I really don't think the Saudis have a real strategy. It's always very difficult to impose your will from the air as well. They have to put boots on the ground. They're not keen to quite properly because, when you're fighting for your land, you fight very, very hard. By one estimate, US online political advertising could quadruple to nearly $1 billion in the 2016 election, creating huge opportunities for digital strategy firms. These firms, mostly small partisan, based in Washington and surrounding suburbs, have grown in sophistication since the last presidential election in 2012. A niche sector is a multi-billion election industry. They are poised to play a much bigger role in 2016 as digital ads assume more importance and change the way political money is spent on advertising. Digital targeting works like this. First, partisan data firms like i360 and Data Trust on the right and Catalyst and Target Smart on the left compile detailed voter databases, scrutinize them for demographic and geographical information on 190 million registered voters. Next, digital targeting firms like Geopolitical, Campaign Grid and Targeted Victory map the voter datasets against commercially available data like internet histories and real estate and tax records. Very sophisticated, and it's not just limited to election time or, I think it's spilling over. We do a little bit of that kind of work, and it's very interesting, I must say. Not targeting, but analysing our work and trying to sort of, and digital IR, I would say, which I enjoy doing. 5 to 8 people killed in Al-Shabaab attack on government building in Mogadishu. I'll put up an image that was tweeted. And it's difficult to understand how many of these people are there out there prepared to die, both here in Kenya and at home in Mogadishu and Somalia. And my concern remains that really there's so many soft targets in Kenya. We are way behind the curve when it comes to security. And, the fact that the police plane was used by two girls to go for a jolly down in Mombasa signals how deep the rot is, and it's very worrying. North Korean Kim Jong-un and his wife resold Jew watcher performance by the Moranbong Band at the April 25th House of Culture on March 22nd, 2014. That was AFP. And Andy Borowitz, tongue-in-cheek, Hillary Clinton officially begins 19 months of looking concerned. With a stop in Iowa on Tuesday, the presidential candidate Hillary Clinton officially embarked on a 19-month marathon of looking concerned, sitting with patrons at Jones Street Java House in Leclerc. The former Secretary of State listened intently, sipped from a cup of coffee, nodded her head at appropriate junctures, flawlessly reenacting a brief scene from her first campaign video. After about 20 minutes of virtually non-stop displays of empathy, Clinton aide said, "We decided to shut it down." Hillary is staring down 19 months of sipping coffee and nodding her head. The aide continued, "We want to make sure she paces herself." Moving to the market, Stanley Druckenmiller, who I do admire, I must admit, said he's wagering that the dollar will continue to strengthen against the euro, saying the European currency could eventually trade at 80 cents, compared with 1.065 today. I think he's right. China's annual economic growth slowed to a 6-year low of 7% in the first quarter, with other key indicators slumping to new multi-year lows. Retail sales, industrial output, fixed asset investment growth rates all missed analyst expectations. And a lot of skepticism about those numbers anyway, that they might have been padded out. Euro briefly topped 106.50, topped 107 yesterday. But we're back around 106.10 now. Monday's low was 105.20. Dollar index must be above 99. Japanese yen, when I walked in, this is probably slightly out of date. The dollar's a little bit stronger, 119.62. Swissy 0.9740. Pound below 147.50. Aussie below 76. India rupee 62.382. The won 10.95.13, the real 306.97, strengthened a little bit, stabilized a little bit of late. Egyptian pound 7.6301, South African rand is over 12.0406. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. Overnight, the dollar snapped 6 straight sessions of gains after US retail sales failed to meet the market's lofty expectations. Sales rose just 0.9% in March, undershooting the consensus forecast of a 1% gain. Core sales were much softer and really has taken me by surprise. I think some of this was weather related, but you would have expected more spending given the fall in gasoline prices, and the economic data has been on the soft side. The IMF cut US growth forecast yesterday, see 2015 and 2016 GDP at 3.1%, down from 3.6 and 3.3% respectively. Asia Times, interesting piece, year on year, total retail and food service sales have grown by only 1%, the lowest level since the recovery began. And it really is a conundrum. Euro dollar, we're around the 106.10 level. I'm a big bear, but it is prone to these very strong bounces like we got yesterday. Tumbling interest rates in Europe leave some banks owing money on loans to borrowers. This is the negative interest rate structure in some places. And the negative interest rate mortgage, it's going to be a huge boost, isn't it? Free money to buy a house, practically. But we don't know what the LTV ratios are. I like this image from Nanex LLC. Pinnacle had a pinnacle moment, he says. And you can see what he's talking about. And then this interesting chart showing copper rallied 5% yesterday before coming all the way down. And copper, of course, is heavily correlated to Zambia, which has had additional woes because of uncertainty around the tax regime. Gold, I'll put up a 3-month chart, could not clear 1200 as the euro bounced, which was an interesting development. Crude oil, $55.18, that's a June contract, we're right at the top of the range. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is putting a damper on the vacation plans of his fellow citizens. Bondholders welcoming the move. Finance Ministry said Friday that Venezuelans traveling to countries, including the US, will only now get authorization to use their credit cards for up to $700 of purchases, down from $2,500. The move, aimed at easing a chronic shortage of the US dollar, will save the government about $2.8 billion this year, according to Barclays plc, saying the risk of default in the short run will fall significantly, which will benefit the entire curve. China's growth supremacy over India is about to end. India's economic growth will power past China's for the first time since 1999 this year. This is the IMF again. India's growth will climb to 7.5%, its fastest pace in 5 years, from 7.2% in 2014, the IMF said. By contrast, China's growth will slow, easing to 6.8% in 2015 from 7.4% in the prior year. That will be the weakest Chinese growth since 1990, in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square crackdown, the data showed. Now, coming back to Africa, and I went through that Africa Pulse report that the World Bank put out, and I'll go and have a look at the IMF report today. But a couple of things which I tweeted, which I thought worth repeating. Risks to the economic outlook for sub-Saharan Africa are tilted to the downside. 2015 forecast is below, they're forecasting 4%, below the 4.4% average annual growth rate of the past 2 decades. Africa's peak growth rates of 6.4% were in the period 2002 to 2008. And the 2015 forecast, as I said, is below. The US has recorded its first trade surplus with Africa. What's interesting is Europe imported $94 billion of oil, China $51 billion of crude oil from Africa. Almost half of both of their total imports from the continent for the year. That's going to be down, big time. Zambia has dropped its mineral royalty increase. The President hopes that the changes will promptly eliminate market anxieties in the mining sector and forestall any potential instability. Zambia announced a new mining tax regime in October last year, requiring open-pit mines to pay up to a 20% royalty on their revenue, up from 6%, while underground mines would pay 8%, up from 6%. That tax regime rattled investors. Companies such as Glencore and First Quantum shelved expansion projects. Barrick threatened to close down its Lumwana copper mine, citing higher royalties, and the kwacha promptly crashed. However, we are reverting to the 2014 mining tax regime, except that the mineral royalty will now be at 9% across the board. So let's see how that is received. South African oil share eased 0.52% off a record closing high yesterday. It's still up 8.42% this year, and it really has been on a tear. Eskom has the longest South African power cut streak in 2 months. Will cut 2,000 megawatts, which is more than Kenya's entire electricity supply, to manage the power grid for a 3rd day, its longest streak of so-called Stage 2 reduction since February, as labour unrest stunted construction at a new plant. Load shedding is a necessary measure to protect the power system. Tencent market's value dropped $11 billion after its chairman cut his stake. Stock fell 5.5%, 161 Hong Kong dollars and 20. Don't know what it did this morning. China's 3rd richest person, cut his stake to 9.65% from 9.86%. If the chairman of companies starts selling, it probably means market could start taking a beating. Sa said the market has risen so much it was expected to come down at some point. Let's see how Napsters, which has a very big stake, reacts to this news. Dollar rand above 12. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Egyptian pound steady at 763. Egyptian stock market is up 0.85% this year. The Nigerian oil share is up 2.7%. It eased back 0.42% yesterday, but has had a stunning more than 25% rally off a 2-year low on February the 13th. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 1.15% 2015. Coming to Kenya, it would be interesting to see some hardcore polling data, because I think a lot of political capital has been eroded. Furthermore, I think the security situation and the perception around the response to it remains a real soft spot, and it's getting softer. And yesterday someone pointed out the president has not been seen for about 4 days since that announcement about the recruitment of 10,000 policemen. Kenya shilling 93.39, and the central bank saw fit to issue a statement yesterday where they said the exchange rate of the shilling against the US dollar has witnessed an upward pressure in the last 1 week. This is mainly a reflection of a strong dollar in the global market, coupled with an elevated but seasonal demand for foreign exchange from the local corporate sector witnessed at this time of the year, said the central bank. Nairobi all shares up 4.84% year to date, rallied for the second session this week yesterday. KCB closed at a fresh record of 64.50. It's up 12.173%, and it's really had a noteworthy rally in what was quite a weak market until recently. If you haven't seen that interview I did with Joshua, have a look. NSE 20 has been underperforming the all share by a wide margin. It's only up 0.3129%. And actually diverged from the all share yesterday, which shows the big cap outperformance. It eased back 0.16%. Kenyan artists have expressed their frustration after it was announced that 6 of the 8 people selected to represent the country at this year's Venice Biennale will be Chinese. Selection includes artists Li Gang, Shi Jinsong and Qin Feng, who critics say have never been to Kenya and do not reference the country in their work. For Kenyans, this is depressingly familiar. The country's first outing at the biennial in 2013. There was a similar controversy because only 2 of 12 participating artists were Kenyan born. On Facebook, the Nigerian curator Olabisi Silva called the choice of artists shambolic. She described the 2013 Kenyan pavilion full of Chinese and Italian artists with some Kenyan artists in a dark room, which should not be allowed to happen again. As I said, the all share pushed higher yesterday. The NSE 20 eased back. The all shares outperformance confirms big cap outperformance. KCB, Safaricom, EABL. 20 winners, 17 losers. Market and better equilibrium. Safaricom firmed up. It's up 14.59% this year and has underpinned the bull move at the NSE. KCB closed a record for the 3rd consecutive session. Weighted average yesterday signaling it's going to close at a record again today. And what's interesting is the divergence between KCB and Equity Bank. KCB is up more than 12%, Equity Bank is down 4.5% this year. And partly because of the dilutive event, because Dr. Mungi wants to issue new shares as an acquisition currency. But I also think because there's been a little bit of finessing around the results and people have lost a little bit of faith. Sequentially, KCB came out first, and then came James and beats KCB, and if you drill into it, there were a couple of 4 or 5 line items which I think international investors in particular might have had an issue with. Co-op has been on a firmer footing of late, rallied 2.38%. Jubilee surged 5.37% to close at 569, and has rallied 9.42% over the last 2 sessions. And EABL rallied a further 1.2% yesterday, closed at 337, targeting 350 in short order. BAT has been very soft this year. It fell 5.75% yesterday. It's down 24.11% year to date, which is a big fall. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm stretched Thursday, Friday. I've got some guests coming from California, but hopefully I'll manage to do something. But thank you for coming by.